Now that I've got the propeller on here, I can check the timing on the engine. The first thing that I did was I put a spark plug in the lower spark plug hole in the number 1 cylinder so I can pull the engine through around with the propeller and bring it around till it's top dead center on the compression stroke of the number 1 cylinder. And then I got down and looked, and there's a data plate down here on the engine, and that has the parameters for the engine. The timing tells you what the horsepower is at different RPMs and stuff like that. So this one happens to be 25 degrees before top dead center was what we want the timing on there. Now, there's a couple of ways of checking that where the timing is supposed to be on it. There's a mark on the back of the flywheel or the ring gear. It shows 25 degrees, 23 degrees, top dead center. You can line those marks up with the split in the crankcase right here. So I've got this tool there that mounts onto the ring gear, and it's just got a rod that runs through there, sticks right on the line for the 25 degree before top dead center mark, and then I can move that pointer up and down or back and forth with the propeller until it lines up with that split in the crankcase. Now I've got my timing synchronizer, my timing light here. It's got 3 leads on it. One of them is a ground. I've got it hooked up to ground. The left-hand lead goes to the left magneto over there, and it hooks into the P lead on the left magneto, and the right one hooks into the P lead on the right magneto. Now the P leads ground out the magnetos to shut them out. It shorts the magnetos to ground to shut them out, and that's what the switches are for in the cockpit of the airplane on the panel. You turn them off to ground the magnetos out, and then you flip them up, and that opens that circuit so that the charge that the magnetos build up goes out through the spark plugs. Well, anyway, I've got those set up there, and turn that on, and that thing it's a buzz box. And when those contacts are closed in there, it buzzes and there's a light. Well, what you want to do is adjust that, move this propeller back and forth until we get both lights come on, and that's when the magnetos are firing. Turn this back past the firing point there, or before the firing point actually, and I just gradually tap this propeller and get this to move until that light comes on. And there's my left magneto, and that's just a hair past the center line, but the right magneto hasn't come on yet. And now a little bit past that, the right magneto comes on. So now I can adjust the magnetos. I'll put that back so that my 25 degree mark is lined up with the center line of the case of the engine, and then I'll loosen up this right magneto just a little bit, enough to turn it, and then I can turn it until the light comes on with it right at that point, and just keep adjusting it until it comes on right at 25 degrees before top dead center. I've loosened up that right mag a little bit and turned it a little bit, and I think I've got it pretty close. Now I turn this back a ways to make sure and get rid of all the backlash in there, and then bring it back around, and then just start bumping it a little bit at a time. I just want to bump it just a little bit at a time until you can hear the tone change on that. I can see the light change come on and the tone change when that magneto fires. And there's the right one firing right now, and that's exactly right on. That's exactly right on that mark. So I can tighten that one up, and then I can figure out what I'm going to do with the left one. I've got that right mag tightened up, so I want to check it again to make sure it didn't change when I torque that down, because sometimes they'll change a little bit when you torque them down. So here we go. There it is. It didn't change. And that's perfect. So that left mag is awful darn close, but I'm going to see if I can get it just a little bit closer. Let's see if I can get in there with a wrench on there and loosen that up. Now that everything is together, I can't do it with that wrench. I'm going to have to get something else. Take the backlash out. There's number right hand one. Again, that's just about perfect. Let's see what we can do about the left hand one. There we go. Alright. Well, the left hand one is better now. I'll go. You'll need a little bit more on the left-hand one. Alright, let's take the backlash out. Left one's firing just a little bit early. Left one still just a touch early. Just a touch. I'm getting a little bit at a time here. Those are so close. Those are so close. I think I'm going to leave well enough alone. I don't think I can get it any better than that. I think that's pretty darn good. Yeah. Yeah, they both come on exactly the same time now. Okay, I got that one bolt on that left mag tightened up. I'm going to tighten up the other one, and I'm going to call that good. Now I'll check it again after I get them all tightened up, but looks pretty good to me. I'm putting in the lower spark plugs. I got them all cleaned up and put in fresh gaskets on them, just a little bit of lube. You got to watch putting the lube on these when you anti-seize compound when you put them on. It's not so bad on the lower ones as it is on the upper ones, but that lube anti-seize compound is pretty loose on there, and if you get it down to the end of the threads, it'll run down and it'll contaminate the firing end and short them out so the plugs won't fire. It happens mostly on the top plugs because it runs downhill. On the bottom ones it's running the other way, so it's not so bad. Well, I've set my torque wrench to about 32.5, 33 pounds, foot-pounds. They call for Lycoming engines, calls for 30 to 35 foot-pounds. I was always used to the Continental, and they call from 25 to 30 foot-pounds, but we'll do it by the book here, and got my certified torque wrench. A mechanic bought this Harbor Freight, and they actually took it in and had it certified, and it actually was pretty good, pretty amazing. So I get those torqued down. I'm not going to put the top ones in yet because I'm going to do a compression check. Compression test might not be totally necessary with all these new cylinders. They're should test high because they're fresh rings in there and they've got lots of assembly lube on them, so they should seal up tight, but that'll give me an indication if there's anything else wrong with them. Make sure the valves seal up tight and everything else, but everything should be good on them. But it doesn't hurt to check them. I learned that a long time ago. Whenever anything comes from the rebuild shop, you better double check it. Got a big burn on my stomach and my leg from that, from the Air Force, from getting a fresh rebuilt APN 59 radar unit out of the depot and putting it on the bench to bench check it. They had it wires shorted out in there, and it arced across and gave me a pretty good jolt. Ever since then I check everything. Well, we can see if I can get my arm broke here. This prop is not exactly in the ideal position to be doing this. Usually I do this when it's on floats, it's way up in the air. I'll do this out of the bottom cylinder instead of the top cylinder because I can get underneath there and then hold onto that prop and move it, wiggle it around to the right spot to get top dead center to get everything all closed up. Now the bottom ones are down so low I can't work on them there. I put my fitting in the number one cylinder. The firing order on this engine is 1, 3, 2, 4. So if you do number 1, then you'll have to turn the prop around a little ways to do the number 3, and then a little ways to do the number 2, and then so on to do the number 4. I've got the bottom plugs in, of course. I've got my fitting in here in the top plug, and I've got my differential compression tester here, my hand with the air set up. I've got the magneto switches off. I've double checked to make sure that they're off, but there's no way that these magnetos can fire anyway because I don't have the spark plug leads in. And that's one of the things I usually do when I'm working on the engine is I take the spark plug leads out That eliminates any possibility of the thing firing if you have a bad P-lead or a bad switch or something else. I've known of more than one guy that's got a broken arm out there fooling around with an engine when it fired. I'm going to get this on, then I want to get over here figure out what I'm going to do here on this prop. I want to make sure I get a hold of that propeller, because the compressed air in there, when I turn that compressed air on, that propeller is going to move, a good chance of moving. I get down here and make sure I get a hold of it. Okay, I got 80 over 80. Actually, it's 85 over 85. Well, I think the engine is all done now. I got a compression test done, put the spark plugs all in now. I'm not going to put the leads on until we get ready to start it up. So we got a compression test done. I put the nuts on the firewall engine mount bolts, got those torqued down, and got the cotter pins in those. I think everything else is done. Oh, I got one more thing to do, and that's to adjust that alternator belt, tighten that hold down bolt back up, and safety wire it. That's the last thing I've got to do on the engine. Everything else is all done. It's all together. Got the oil in it, got all my hoses all hooked up, oil filters on and torqued down, and safety wired. I'll get that alternator belt adjusted, alternator tightened back down, and safety wired, and then that's it. Hip hip hooray! Hip hip hooray!